This podcast is brought to you by the Heldridge Hotel, New Brunswick's only 4-star hotel and a preferred hotel of Rutgers football fans. The Heldridge helps you make the most of your game day weekend, providing premium accommodations in the cultural heart of downtown New Brunswick. Restaurants, bars, theaters, parks, museums, and more are only steps away. Whether you're traveling alone or with a large group, book your stay at the Heldridge and make the most of your game day weekend. Visit theheldridge.com today.
Shopping is hard, right? But I found a better way. Stitch Fix online personal styling makes it easy. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required. And he sends just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and styling tips. I keep what works and send back the rest. It's so easy. Make style easy. Get started today at stitchfix.com/Spotify. That's stitchfix.com/Spotify.
Hello, all. Give me a couple seconds here to tweet out this link. Apologies if the Wi-Fi isn't great. I'm in a hotel room in Columbus. Things can get a little iffy, and I have a lot of tabs open, and a lot of things are happening. So in the meantime, while I send out the link here, and apologies if my quality isn't great. I didn't have time to take my mic. Sorry. Apologies. But I won't be the worst looking or worst sounding person in the Rutgers basketball universe tonight after this result. Again, so hang tight here while you're all waiting. Just dump your questions. I'm sure you have a lot of them in the comment section. Again, sorry guys if this is a little glitchy. How's my sound? You guys let me know how my sound is. Sorry again. Okay, so the good thing, or I should say, the bad thing is that I'm not in Piscataway. Again, I'm in Columbus. Rutgers football game tomorrow against Ohio State. So I missed this game. The bad thing, I'm not there. I wish I was there. I wish I was able to be at the press conference and ask the questions you guys want me to ask. The good thing is that I'm live here and have a chance for you guys to kind of have more of a visceral reaction to a game that deserves an immediate reaction. Rutgers loses to Central Connecticut State 67-54, and it's not that they lost, it's that they got dominated. They were losing the last 32 minutes. They got it within 1 in the first half. They got it within 3 a couple times in the second half, but they never really came close. Central Connecticut State was a better team than Rutgers all night. They not only tried harder, they out-hustled Rutgers, and the stats kind of bear that out with offensive rebounding, with the turnovers forced, but they were better. They hit shots, they hit open shots, they created better shots, which is a recurring theme for teams that are playing Rutgers, is that they create better shots. Rutgers did not create good shots outside of Tariq Francis, who had 19 points on 7 of 16 shooting. Rutgers had 35 points on 33% shooting the rest of the roster. They went with Dennis Badalow a bit in the second half after Steve Peichel made a wholesale hockey line switch and tried to make him the guy that could score, but that wasn't working much outside of a quick spurt. Dylan Grant had a bad game. Just a lot to get into here. I will get into it. So I'm a little frazzled here, as you guys can imagine. I was going to wait to listen to Steve Peichel in his radio interview before doing this, but I thought it wouldn't be worth the wait because you guys wanted to have a reaction right away. I'll get this out of the way first. What's with the baseball logo on your hat? This is the Boston Red Sox. I'm a Red Sox fan, very casual. We can get into that another day, but just to answer that question. After tonight, 4-27 is on the table. I think we should pump the brakes. I think it's totally fair to be doom and gloom and to sound the alarms. The alarm bells should be ringing all over the place after this result. I still think Rutgers will win 4 to 5 Big Ten games. It kind of just happens. Like rarely are teams 2-18 in the Big Ten. And they're going to beat at least one of Penn and Delaware State. But yes, I understand the general message here, which is I guess we can start with this. Every concern that was had entering the season in the preseason was here today. They did not have scoring. They don't have anyone outside of maybe Tariq Francis today against a low major team, and outside of spurts of Dylan Grant over these first 5 games that can create offense by themselves. They have nobody that can score in isolation and get a bucket when you need them to, which is the way this offense works, because they don't do the alternative where they pass the ball around, create dribble penetration, and create open shots. That's not happening either. I think Dennis Badalow and Harun Zerno are 2 guys that could score as spot-up shooters in theory, but this offense doesn't create that. This coaching staff, this team does not generate good looks for its players. And that was an issue in the first 4 games. It was a major reason why Maine and Lehigh and American hung around. And it's why Central Connecticut State, a good team that beat Boston College, was able to dominate this game. I think it's a bad sign to be in the same sentence as Boston College, basketball-wise. They're a program in a very bad spot, and Rutgers is a program in a very, very bad spot. This does not bode well going into Vegas next week. They're playing a team much better than Central Connecticut State and Tennessee. If Central Connecticut State could beat Rutgers by 13, can you imagine what Tennessee is going to do on Monday? Not going to be pretty. Dr. Josh Fink just says, woof. I think that's kind of the general feeling after this one. Understandably so. Rutgers, sorry, let me pull this up. The Alchemist says, Rutgers always has to get beat by at least one small school every single year now. It is an annual thing, losing to these scrub teams. Well, last year's team didn't lose to these teams. They didn't. They lost to Kennesaw State on the road. I understand that. I think that's a little less catastrophic as losing to a sub-300 team, a Central Connecticut State team they had never lost to, who the last time they were here in 22-23, Rutgers won by almost 40, right? So I think this is the worst loss Rutgers has suffered since Lafayette, if I had to go off the top of my head. And that team lost that game because it didn't show up. It had its worst game of the season. It didn't show up. It kind of took Lafayette for granted. And eventually that was proven out when it miraculously made the NCAA tournament with a crazy run in February. This team is not that team. This team does not have Ron Harper Jr. It does not have Geo Baker. It does not have veterans. It does not have scorers. It does not have lockdown defenders like Caleb McConnell. It does not have much. It does not have much depth. It does not have a lot to hang on. And I think that a result like this, as we talked about our question earlier, gets the ball rolling to thinking how bad this could get. I think the preseason expectations of Rutgers finishing 17th to 18th in the Big Ten are fair now, right? I think it's hard to imagine Rutgers getting out of the Big Ten basement. And it's just, this was not, the other thing was, this was not an isolated bad night. Rutgers was not dominating in its first 4 games, and then this happens. This was coming. This was, the warning signs were there, and you could smooth over those with wins. It's always better to react to them with a win, but now that you lost, they all kind of come forward. And to Steve Pikiell's credit, he did say was not happy with the defense. He did seem, he's a very positive guy publicly. He was a bit, I don't know if negative is the right word, but cautionary in his public remarks about this team, which tells you a lot. This isn't shocking. This result is not shocking if you had read what we wrote about this team in the preseason, if you looked at it. But it is an indictment on where Rutgers is as a program in the 10th year of Steve Pikiell, where they are in the post-Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey era, and how bad this season can get. Just going through the comments here. It wasn't the loss, it was the way they lost, says Brian Y6Z8T. I agree. Again, I agree. Rutgers did not just lose to Central Connecticut State on a crazy last-second 3 in a tight game where it couldn't just score. It got dominated by Central Connecticut State in a game where it could not generate offense, in a game where for a 10-minute span, it held Central Connecticut State to 2 made threes, 9 total points. In that span, it only outscored them 14-9 and could not overcome what at the start of that span was a 9-point deficit. If you can't take advantage of a point where you're holding a team to 2 buckets in 10 minutes, I just don't think you deserve to win that game. And clearly that bore out. And Rutgers was kind of getting close. And you think that maybe they can make it a game towards the end, but Central Connecticut State really blew things open at the end. So I certainly agree with this sentiment. Fire the entire athletic department, understandably so. James Martin sent this comment. Understandably so, the reaction is that. And I understand the feeling of sorry, I'm struggling with words here, but I understand the sentiment, right? But again, realistically, unless this is indeed the beginning of a 4-27 season, the buyout numbers it would take to fire Steve Peichel are astronomical and not feasible for this department. And Kelly Zinn and leadership of this school have indicated their understanding of how poor the NIL situation was when they arrived, and I think that signals that this year is a mulligan. Right? This team is bad because it lacks talent, because it's very young, and it didn't get a ton of talent out of the transfer portal. That's partly because of a lack of NIL, and I think that the administration acknowledges that and wants to give both football and basketball, its main coaches, a chance for another year, a mulligan this year, that when they have resources behind them, if the athletic department can get them resources, what can they do with those resources? If that continues, when that happens, I think that's kind of when things are going to start to go downhill, and obviously that will be a year later with a buyout that is lower. Geez, how bad is this year going to be from Ignacio A? Yep, that's again the sentiment that we see a lot here in these comments. This has been an issue his entire tenure. Same coaching staff, so offense is going to stay the same year after year. That is, again, an off-season thing where after the most disappointing year in program history, the same staff comes back to a T. Every member of the staff comes back. Steve Peichel has not fired a single coach in his 10 years at Rutgers. Has not fired a single coach. The only two that left were Jay Young, who came back to his staff, is currently on his staff, and Ben Asher left for another job. He's currently an assistant at Utah State, and he's lost a couple of lower-level graduate assistant guys. None of them have been fired. And it's the point where you have assistant coaches on one-year contracts. You don't have to necessarily fire them. You could just not retain them. And, again, Rutgers ran back with the same coaching staff. They pay these assistant coaches good money. Brandon Knight has one of the best salaries in the country for an assistant coach. The product must be better, at least coaching-wise. It's one thing to have players that aren't good enough to hit open shots. It's another thing entirely to not create open shots, to have the offense funnel off of pick and rolls, to create mid-range jumpers. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but Rutgers must take one of the highest rates of mid-range jumpers, and they don't take threes. This was a big point throughout Steve Pikel's tenure. The season it continues. Rutgers took 19 threes, 19 out of its 58 shots from the floor. That is 33% of its shots. One out of every three shot is a three. That is not enough in the modern era. That is not enough. And Rutgers on the season, only 32.5% of their shot attempts have been threes. That's 312th nationally. When you have an opponent that went 9 of 21, that's how you get upset against these lower level teams. It was so bad I'm letting my son drive home on his learner's permit. My judgment is lacking. Brian says, please be careful on the road. Make sure he's keeping his eye on the road. I appreciate you guys tuning in on the drive home. The Alchemist says we are at an 18-team mega conference, and we're going to find ourselves at the bottom yearly with the just like the Big East. This year, certainly in basketball, I think it would take a significant improvement for this team not to finish 17th or 18th. I felt that way in the preseason, and I feel even more confidently in that after what we watched in these first 5 games. Scott Greeny says players' era is going to be fun. It's going to be a long week. If Rutgers if they somehow beat Notre Dame, or they win the third game against a team to be determined, that will do a little bit to reverse the damage of this game. But certainly after what we witnessed tonight, I think it's hard to envision Rutgers not going 0-3 in Las Vegas, at which point you are 4-4 entering the stretch of death against Purdue, against Michigan, against Seton Hall. Rough. CCSU is not a juggernaut. Yes, CCSU is not a juggernaut. Let's see. We just keep going through the numbers. CCSU 13 fast break points. Can't use NIL as an excuse. NIL is James Martin says you can't use NIL as an excuse. I agree. There's no excuse for Rutgers to lose to Central Connecticut State. I don't care if Rutgers' NIL budget was $0. They should not lose to Central Connecticut State. Again, that 100% agree. I will say that it does explain the fact Rutgers is in a position to not only lose to Central Connecticut State, but get dominated by Central Connecticut State. But I agree. Not an excuse. Of all the games, of all the times, you cannot. This is the equivalent of playing a Norfolk State with football. You cannot use that as an excuse. I agree. Pike's not going anywhere. I We can game it out as much as you want. A loss to Central Connecticut State is not going to suddenly have donors ponying up $22 million plus another couple $1 million from Brandon Knight to get rid of them, plus another $25 million to hire new staff, plus another $13 million or whatever to hire a new coach. So yeah, it's just financially not feasible. Sorry, going through all the comments, we're not reading them out loud, but if you're watching on YouTube, you can read them on the screen. Yes. Again, James Barr, you can't blame NIL when you lose to the nobodies. I thought I misread this comment initially. I thought it was you can't make NIL when you lose to the nobodies. I agree with my own sentiment that I just said, but it's going to be hard to sell. I guess there's two ways to look at it. It's going to be hard to get people to want to invest in this program when this result happens. The inverse spin, the argument, sales pitch, whatever, will be Rutgers desperately needs somebody so they don't lose games to teams like CCSU. Tough spot for Rutgers, tough spot for Kelly Zinn, tough spot for the program. It wasn't an issue of creating shots. They had easy and open looks. They just couldn't finish. Also unsure why they are mainly using ISO. It failed last year with Dylan and Ace. They use ISO because that's what this team has done for 10 years. That is the offense they run. That was what Geo Baker was doing. That's what Ron Harper was doing. It's the same offense that's been for the past 10 years. I think people that have been watching Rutgers for a long time will agree there. Not that bad of a game from Obole. I agree. I think he's playing better. I think he's more confident. I think he's clearly taking a step forward. But again, he didn't have enough against a team like Central Connecticut State. He finished with 6 points on 3 of 3 shooting, 10 rebounds, 3 fouls, 2 turnovers. Yeah, not bad. Not bad. He probably should have gotten the alley-oop at the beginning, somewhat of a bad pass to him, but he had such a size advantage. It's crazy to me they only had 3 shots, and one of them was a putback off of an offensive rebound. How does Rutgers not create an opportunity for him to get the ball near the rim to score against overmatched centers? Again, I just don't understand how they're not able to take advantage of that. Death Star says, even if he had proper NIL resources, do you actually think he could win big? I don't think he can, period. I do not know, right? I don't know. I think that's a fair point from Death Star 123. I think certainly given what happened last year with 2 top 5 NBA picks and what happened, that is certainly an argument that can be made. I don't know. And I think that will be the argument made that they were unable to compete because they did not have the resources to do so. Once you do have the NIL and the resources and it doesn't work out, then that's where the argument is moot. Right now we're talking in hypotheticals, and hypotheticals can go either way. Which can't cover threes every year the same. Yes, 3-point defense was not great today. I agree. They have to coach defense and offense. Sorry, coach, you can't have asset anymore, Pike. Rutgers makes history again. First Big Ten win for CCSU in its 91-year-old basketball program. First win for CCSU over Rutgers. Rutgers was 5-0 over them prior to today. Central Connecticut State has improved as a program. Certainly, it's not the complete disaster it was a decade ago, but it's certainly not at a point. And Pat Sellers is a good coach. It's certainly not at a point where it should be dominating. I cannot emphasize that enough. Dominating Rutgers at the rack. This is what you get when you have complete crap NIL. Again, yes, but in this game, the way this happened, NIL cannot be an excuse. What are the odds of making the NCAA tournament? 0%. I would bet everything I own that Rutgers does not make the NCAA tournament. I mean, you just watched the same game I did, I think. It's not. Ron 6083 says it's not an upset. Pikel's arrogance cost the team this game. They're going to lose. They're going to do a lot more losing than winning, and it's because of Pikel overestimates his coaching ability. No excuse to lose to CCST. I mean, I don't know if it was arrogance. I don't know if that's entirely fair. I just think that they were outcoached, they were outplayed, they were out hustled, they were out everything. See, Rutgers' largest run was only 8 points. Exactly. I mean, look, the numbers are what they are. Rutgers shot 36.2% from the field. They shot 26.3% on threes. They only took 10 free throws. They went 9 of 18 on layups. They scored at 0.871 points per possession, which is not good. They had 10 turnovers. They only had 4 steals. On 10 offensive rebounds, they only had 8 second chance points. So they didn't create many opportunities. They didn't take advantage of many of the opportunities they did create. The Alchemist says, I can't be mad at these players. Some of these guys are in bad spots, but they get paid. So I don't know. It's hard because there are 7 players on this team that are freshmen, 7 freshmen. There are 4 returnees. None of them are entirely standout stars. And the transfers have not been particularly great outside of Tariq Francis. So there's been a lot of underperforming, I would say. But I agree that sometimes it's unfair to blame a player if they're put in a bigger spot than they are able to handle. And I think that's the case for a lot of players on this roster, at least early on in the season. Larry L., rare Central Connecticut State fan, says, let's go Blue Devils. Blue Devils, we'll take the money and the W, thanks. Hopefully for your sake, you bet Central Connecticut State money line. I know it was a 15-point spread, so makes a little bit of dough. Sorry, going through all the comments here. Will Pleco get fired after the season? Casey Beckleiter says, I would be shocked. Again, the buyout is enormous. The NIL backing that he had was just not there from the administration. By the time Kelly Zinn arrived, it was too late. They got a new GM. They're going to emphasize raising money in the offseason or ahead of the next offseason this year. So I think that because of all those factors, he will get at least one more year. Again, barring Rutgers going 4-27 and a donor stepping up and saying, I will donate this money to pay out the rest of the salary, which is just not likely at all. I think he gets at least one more year. So I'm caught up on comments. 20 minutes in, we'll go a little bit more because I know this is the kind of game where people want to have a reaction. And again, I apologize if this is a little not greatly structured. I kind of went through a lot of the questions, went through some points, and now I'll kind of go through the player grades. And again, please continue to vent in the comment section. Please ask any questions. I will probably not highlight every question as I've been doing because it takes up a lot of time, and some of that is just venting, but please feel free. Please please subscribe, please do all that stuff to help us out. We'll go through grades. Tariq Francis, 19 points on 16 shots, 3 threes from the free throw line, 3 assists, no turnovers, 1 steal. I mean, he got an A. It didn't really hit a couple shots at the end, but at that point it wasn't. The comeback wasn't feasible. The one thing I will say is that he only had 5 points in the second half, 1 of 7 shooting, kind of disappeared after halftime, but he did more than enough in the first half to put Rutgers in position to beat Central Connecticut State. I think he gets an A. Not much. One of the few bright spots of the day. JaMychal Davis, 2 points on 1 of 6 shooting, 3 assists, 1 rebound. Rough game from JaMychal Davis. Was okay defensively, but not at a high level as usual, and horrible offensively. So you have to give him a D. Just a ugly stat line. Dylan Grant, 6 points on 2 of 10 shooting, 1 of 3 on threes, 4 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 turnovers. I gotta give him a D. Really, the worst game of the season by far from Dylan Grant. He showed that he had to be the guy for Rutgers over the last two games, and he was a big reason they won those games. He was one of the few bright spots in those games. In this game, just a really rough game. Forced a couple of shots, from the outside. Could not drive to the rim as easily as he has in the previous 2 games. Couldn't finish when he did. Only got to the free throw line 2 times. Defensively was not entirely locked in. Rough game. Worst game of the season by far from Dylan Grant. Emmanuel Obole, again, 6 of 6, 3 of 3 shooting, 10 rebounds, 3 fouls, 2 turnovers. I thought he was fine. I thought, again, his confidence is very visibly improving with every game. There was a great play where he's on a pick and roll. Central Connecticut State's forward gets the ball in the paint, has what seems like an easy layup, and Obole runs from the opposite side of the key and blocks the shot. He had 2 blocks. Impressive defensively, fine on the glass. Not enough offensively for my liking, but part of that is just because they didn't create opportunities for him to do that. I'll give him a B+. I thought he was good. I think to go off that, the fact that he looks so good is accentuated by lack of depth behind him. Byfall was shockingly bad today. 0 points on all of 1 shots, 1 rebound, 1 foul in 5 minutes. Lost defensively, gave up 2 alley-oop dunks with no resistance, and is just unplayable. I mean, I think I want to give him a chance to play his way in. We've been told that he's trying to get worked in slowly. But the glimpses that we've seen prove why he only played 40 odd minutes in 2 seasons for Kansas State and Arkansas. Just can't stay on the floor, just too much of a defensive liability and adds nothing offensively. And then Bryce George, I was surprised how little he played in the first half, only 4 minutes. He did play 11 minutes in the second half, and I thought he was good, certainly better than Byfall, and I thought he was fine, as good as he's been in the previous few games. He had 4 points on 2 of 3 shooting, 4 rebounds, 1 steal. Yeah, I'll give him a B. I thought he was good. And I thought that when Steve Peichel went to that lineup in the second half where he subbed in Bryce George and then 3 freshmen that had not played to that point, Lino Mark, Caden Powers, and Chris Newley, Bryce George played pretty well in that stretch. And I think the interesting thing in that stretch, too, is that Rutgers tried to make Dennis Badalow the main offensive linchpin. They tried to make him have the ball in his hands, drive to the basket, create shots on his own. But again, the issue remains that rather than creating a shot for him on the wing, an open 3, or moving the ball, or an offensive set, or anything, it's really just giving him the ball and telling him to create something, drive to the basket, take a shot. It did not look like he was being set up for success. And while it worked out the first couple of possessions where they did that, Central Connecticut State adjusted out of the timeout. We're doubling him, forcing him to take the ball out of his hands, and then no one else was really able to create. Caden Powers chucked up a 3. Lino Mark drove to the rim but couldn't finish. So there's not enough offensive weapons on this team, and there's not enough creativity to take advantage of the few offensive weapons this team has. I think Dennis Badalow can do more. I think Harun Zerno could do more. I don't think they're being put in position to do more. Let me go back to the comments. I haven't checked in a bit. Every other team seems to hit on European talent, so why can't Rutgers? And who's in charge of evaluating these players? From Simos C. Petrokopus. Sorry, there's a lot of letters together and I can't read it. I apologize. Again, I think that's the same with a lot of teams hit on American talent, hit on the transfer portal, hit out of high school. There are only so many talented kids. And all the talented European kids that come here to Illinois, to Gonzaga, to there's another school that's evading my head. It's the schools that have money and infrastructure and are attractive places to go. Right? Just because a kid is from Europe doesn't mean he's going to instantly be a good player. So the thing is that Rutgers went to Europe as a way to fill out its roster because it was a less expensive market than the transfer portal, and they thought they can get better value there, which is true in some cases, whereas a team like Illinois and Gonzaga is going to the European market to find top players that elevate the roster. And for example, Illinois, their best player last year was a European player, right? He accentuated. I just don't know if that was the case this year. It certainly seemed like Rutgers tried to do that, but so far does not seem to be the case that those two guys are the 2 best players on this team. Bryce must take more minutes share from Fall. I agree. Bob P says Peichel, one of the best coaches in the country, but have to be aware of a hotshot team in their small league, which had a great season last year. I think a lot of commenters would disagree with this assessment. I would just ask if you could provide any proof of that statement, because I would be hard pressed to argue that point if I was anyone other than Steve Peichel's agent. I just don't see that. I wonder what Kelly Zinn and President Tate will be thinking tomorrow at 3 p.m. after a horrendous 24 hours in 2 flagship programs. Rough week, really, that will only be salvaged, I think, if Rutgers football beats Penn State in a week. And until then, they're going to have to grin and bear your way through the next week, because it's going to be rough. To finish out the player grades really quickly, Dennis Badalow, 11 points on 3 of 8 shooting, 2 of 4 threes, 3 of 4 on free throws, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 turnovers. He had a couple of stretches there where he was able to get to the rim. He hit a 3 that could have been big if Rutgers started a comeback off of it, but just a little passive in the first half. And I don't think Rutgers is getting the most out of him. I'll give him a C+ because he was good for stretches, but disappeared in up and just did not have a great game. Caden Powers, 0 points on 0 of 3 shooting, with 2 on 3s, forced a couple shots. Not going to grade him because he only played 4 minutes, but not a great for a guy that has not played much this season, who got his one opportunity in a big spot, did not show anything to more play time down the stretch. I should say later on in the season. Harun Zerno, 0 points, 1 shot. 1 rebound, 4 minutes, 1 turnover. Again, it feels like a situation where he has limited opportunities, and when he's put in, he feels like he has to do something, rush the pass that turned into a turnover. It feels like he should have more minutes, though I guess the issue is that his defense is not great. That was another issue for Dennis Badalow. Central Connecticut State was clearly hunting him defensively every time he was on the court. It felt like every time they could try to get a mismatch, they would run a ball screen, or they would do whatever they could to get Dennis Badalow isolated against the ball handler. And more often than not, it worked, which is part of the reason Dennis Badalow got the grade he did. Darren Buchanan, 2 points on 1 of 3 shooting, 2 rebounds, 1 turnover in 9 minutes. Again, disappointed with Dennis Badalow so far this season. Really does not add much offensively. Defensively is not a plus defender. So I guess I give him a C, but just really disappointing so far with him this year. That's it for the player grades. Mark Assessing asks if we could talk about Rutgers football versus Penn State instead of this game. I think that's what everyone wants, but let's wait for the podcast next week. This is a great point. Rutgers entered today, and I believe is still the case. I just checked, the 364th non-conference strength of schedule in the country. And there are 365 teams. The only team with a weaker non-conference strength of schedule is Seton Hall. So yes, Rutgers is not playing juggernauts. They're playing bad teams, multiple bad teams. And that non-conference strength of schedule includes Tennessee and includes Notre Dame. So that tells you how bad these teams are, plus Delaware State and Penn. Rutgers, there's no reason Rutgers should have lost any of those 7 games, of which, by the way, they paid every one of those teams $80,000. So they paid Central Connecticut State $80,000 to show up to the RAC and dominate them, which is just not great. Lino, Mark, Newly grade. Again, they played 4 minutes each. I'm not going to grade them specifically, but I thought Lino had a rough, did not really. Lino, Mark, Newly, and Kane Powers are in the same spot where they have not played much so far. They were put into a big spot with an opportunity to A, help Rutgers dig out of a hole and avoid an upset, and B, show some things that would earn them more playing time going forward, because you can look as good as you want in practice, but what matters is producing in a game, and they didn't do that against a bad team. So I thought that was a missed opportunity from both of them. Just turn on your TV or tablet. That's the only answer for this weekend. I think that's probably the best for people's mental health, but you guys are Rutgers fans at 9 o'clock on a Friday night listening to me talk for 30 minutes about Rutgers basketball. I think you guys are beyond the point of help and are going to watch anyway because you can't help yourselves. Pike should get in trouble for putting that non-con together. The reasoning is sound. This is not a Rutgers team that's going to beat anyone good. First of all, they need confidence early in the season. They need to get wins somehow, right? And if you're going to in the long shot chance of making the NCAA tournament, you do that by building a resume, by beating the pulp out of these tomato can teams. The issue, obviously, is that Rutgers has not beaten the pulp out of anyone other than Rider. They've skated by. I should say not skated by. I use that phrase wrongly, but they barely got by Maine, Lehigh, and American. And then they got eviscerated by Central Connecticut State. So the theory behind putting the schedule together makes sense. But the result, it's low reward, high risk, right? It's the reward if you beat these teams is nothing. And the risk is that if you lose to one of these teams, it's catastrophic. Before I answer this football question, let me go really quick through my mentions and through the Discord to make sure. I know you guys get priority in the YouTube comments, but I want to make sure everyone gets in. One question submitted to me via text was, is this the worst loss in your tenure covering Rutgers basketball, especially given what Quinnipiac did to Central Connecticut State? And what Quinnipiac did to Central Connecticut State, for those who have not been following Central Connecticut State, Quinnipiac beat Central Connecticut State 71-49. 71-49. And that same team that lost 71-49 to Quinnipiac just beat Rutgers by 13 points. But is this the worst loss? I still think Lafayette is worse because that team had expectations, and this team does not have expectations. The expectations are you should beat teams like Central Connecticut State, but to say this team had expectations is unfair. So I don't think it's the worst loss. I think it's up there. I certainly think it's one of the 2 or 3 worst losses, but it's certainly not worse than Lafayette. Going through the comments. I got one. Irrespective, do you think there's a ceiling on Rutgers basketball irrespective of the coach? And that's from Richard Kent. I think there's a ceiling with the current investment in the program, NIL-wise. I think that's the truth for essentially every program if they were in this spot. If they just don't have the resources to compete with the rest of the league, the only solution would be then to find a coach or a person leading the program that could maximize everything they have at their disposal, that finds creative ways, plays a creative style, a Bucky ball kind of thing that they're playing down in Texas A&M, but they were previously doing at Samford, like one of these esoteric, unique deals that smaller programs have used to success. Okay, I got nothing else on Twitter. Let me check the Discord, and unless you guys have anything else on the chat, I will be wrapping this up soon. How do we get as robust of a basketball NIL situation as Central Connecticut State? I would say those two are. I will say Central Connecticut State probably is not that far off from Rutgers. Well, on that note, any last second calls? I've been going on for 35 minutes, which is 10 minutes longer than I expected. I know that I rambled on a little bit on this, so I apologize. I hope I gave you guys some outlet to take out your frustration and just talk about this game. And well, we'll see what happens in Vegas. Rutgers goes to play Tennessee on Monday. Can get ugly. On Tuesday, they can make up for this somewhat against Notre Dame. But we'll see. What is obvious, though, is that this is a bad loss. I won't say catastrophic loss, because catastrophic would imply this ruins a season that could have been. Now, it's interesting note here. Inacio says that Central Connecticut State is 251 on KenPom. 251 on KenPom. You know what the worst part of that is? Central Connecticut State entered today 298th. Central Connecticut State went up 47 spots after destroying Rutgers. 47 spots, which I guess makes this loss look less bad for Rutgers, but not great. Anyway, thanks, guys, for listening. Thanks for tuning in. What is undisputable is that this loss is one of the worst of the Steve Pikiell era. It is a horrible sign of things to come this season. And if there was already some apathy about the year, I think a lot of the 10% of the fan base that was still tuning in will want to be checked out for much of the year, barring an upset win in the other direction, which we don't foresee. But anyway, thanks, guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Me and Paletti will do a post-game show from Columbus after the Ohio State game. Till then, have a good night. Thanks again for tuning in. Bye.
The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in more places that could expose you more to identity theft. But LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, our US-based restoration specialists will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Don't face drained accounts, fraudulent loans, or financial losses alone. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.